So, your application is growing. That's awesome. But with growth comes a big question. Your users need to find their data and they need to find it fast. But how you let them do that, well, that decision has huge consequences for your product, your budget, and your entire engineering team. And it all boils down to one fundamental choice. And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? Do you stick with the simple, direct queries that your database can already handle? Or do you take the plunge and invest in a dedicated, heavy-duty search service? This is the choice we're going to unpack right now. Okay, so before we can really pick a path, we have to be on the same page about the tools we're even talking about. At a high level, this is all about two different kinds of APIs, or application programming interfaces, that let your app get to your data. On one hand, you've got a query API. The best way to think about this is like using the filters on a shopping website, Show me shirts, size medium, color blue. It's super specific, very precise. But then you have a search API. This is more like typing comfy blue shirt for summer into the main search bar. It understands what you mean, it can handle typos, and it can even give you back summaries, like telling you how many shirts it found from each brand. All right, so how do we actually put one of these into action? The source material we're looking at lays out two really clear options that kind of represent these two different philosophies. Both of them get you to the same place, finding data. But oh boy, they take very different routes to get there. Let's just put them right next to each other. On the left, we have the simple, direct route. The source calls it SDL, and it's built on a standard database like MySQL. This is our basic query API. On the right, you've got the superpowered, flexible path. The source calls this Nile/search, and it uses a specialized engine like Elasticsearch. And that's our search API. So you might be asking, why would I ever start with the simple one? Well, the perks are huge, especially when you're just starting out. It is incredibly low effort to get going. We're talking zero code integration. You don't have any extra systems to manage, which keeps your whole setup way less complicated. And maybe most importantly, when you write data to it, you can read it back immediately. It's perfectly consistent. But then there's the powerhouse. Going with a dedicated search service unlocks a whole new level of what you can do. Suddenly, you can offer real Google-style full-text search. You can create these flexible summaries and analytics on the fly. We call those aggregations. And you can handle ridiculously complex filtering across all sorts of data without even breaking a sweat. So here's the million-dollar question. How do you choose? Well, it's not a gut feeling. The source gives us a fantastic framework that's based on three key areas: what your product actually needs, what it's going to cost you, and the technical limits of your current system. First up, let's talk about your product. This is usually the biggest driver. Just look at this list. Do your users absolutely need to type a full sentence into a search bar? Do they need to find related items or filter on data that's buried deep inside other data? If the answer to any of these is a firm yes, then, well, your decision is pretty much made for you. You need a dedicated search service. Now, this is really important. All that power, it doesn't come for free. You have to accept a trade-off called eventual consistency. All that means is there might be a tiny delay, we're talking a few seconds, between when data is saved and when it actually shows up in search results. Your app's user interface has to be smart enough to handle that, so a user doesn't get confused when something they just created doesn't pop up in a list right away. Next up, let's talk about money. Because a dedicated search service is exactly that, another service. It's another piece of infrastructure you have to pay for every single month. And that cost is going to depend on how much data you have and how you're using it. And this table does a great job of laying out the real numbers. The source gives us some pretty solid estimates. As you can see, as your number of documents grows from, say, 30 million up to 350 million, the monthly cost per data center goes up too. And that's true whether you're on a cheaper shared cluster or a more expensive dedicated one. To make that really hit home, let's just pull out one example. Let's say your app has 120 million documents. You're on a shared cluster, and you've replicated it across 3 data centers for reliability. You are looking at an annual cost of nearly $5,000. That's a real line item on your budget. And finally, we hit the third big question, the technical limitations. What happens when your simple database, the one that's been powering your simple queries, just hits a wall? This is the breaking point, when the technology itself tells you it's time for a change. So we've gone over the why. Now let's get really practical and talk about the when. How do you know for sure that it's time to pull the trigger and make the switch to a dedicated search service?
Thankfully, the source gives us a super practical checklist of warning signs. First, things just get slow. Queries that used to be instant now take forever. Second, you start having downtime because complex queries are just knocking your database over. And third, and this is a great rule of thumb, if you find yourself adding more than 10 different indexes to a single database table just to keep things fast, you're fighting a losing battle. It's time to switch.
Okay, so after weighing your product needs, the cost, and the technical limits, what's the final verdict? It all comes down to one really powerful guiding principle.
I love this quote from the source materials summary because it just nails it. Start simple. Use the basic query API for as long as you possibly can. Don't take on the complexity and the financial cost of a dedicated search service until you absolutely have to, either because your product demands it or your technology is crying for help.
And here's the best part, the thing that should let you sleep at night. This is not some stressful, irreversible, one-time decision. You can absolutely add a powerful search service later on, right on top of what you already have, without breaking everything. It's an evolution, not a scary all-or-nothing choice. Which really leaves us with this one last thought to chew on. The choice between a simple query and a powerful search. It's actually a question of strategy. Are you going to build for the complex, expensive future that you might have one day? Or are you going to build smart and build efficiently for the reality of the product you have right now? The answer to that question, well, it's going to guide you to the right choice every single time.